Welcome to the Steering Change Podcast, navigating through the commercial transportation industry in Alberta and beyond, powered by the Alberta Motor Transport Association. Here's your host, Kelsey Hipkin.
Hello, friends of Steering Change, and welcome to 2026. We are back for another year and are thrilled you are here to join us. 2025 was a busy year in which we saw industry faced with issues such as tariffs and potential highway speed changes. As an association, AMTA was focused on advocating on our members' behalf, as well as evolving the strategic direction of the association, including a new AMTA tagline, Advocate, Innovate, Educate. We look forward to sharing more with you on that one in the coming weeks, as well as bringing you a suite of new episodes for 2026. But for now, whether you're on the road, in the yard, or at the office, thank you for listening, and let's get started. Today, we'll learn about the importance of investigating collisions within your company, enhancing safety, accountability, and operational excellence. We're pulling today's episode from an AMTA regional meeting held January 14th, 2026, and I would like to introduce our guest. Robert William Tell, not to be confused with the Overture, is known to many as Bob. Bob is a seasoned professional whose career spans over 4 decades across military engineering, law enforcement, forensic investigation, and public service leadership. Currently serving as team lead, collisions and compliance within the City of Calgary's Fleet and Inventory Division, Bob oversees a team of 21 investigators and inspectors ensuring safety, compliance, and excellence in municipal fleet operations. In addition to this, Bob owns Big Rock Forensics, providing consulting services for reconstructions and reconstruction or collision investigation reviews, as well as providing forensic photography training. Bob's journey is marked by relentless pursuit of precision, a deep commitment to public safety, and a passion for teaching and mentorship. From the battlefields of the Gulf War to the streets of Calgary, Bob's career reflects a rare blend of technical mastery, investigative rigor, and human-centered leadership.
Appreciate that. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Bob Tell. I work currently for the City of Calgary in their training and compliance department. So I am responsible for the city's carrier profile, and I have a team of investigators that investigate any collision involving a city vehicle. And we also do CVSA style inspections on city vehicles to ensure that our operators and our fleet are being run within compliance. On the other side, prior to working for the city, I worked for the Calgary Police Service as a police officer for 16 years and 12 years in the UK as a police officer. So I have my background is very much in enforcement. The last 12 years of my police service, I was a collision reconstructionist as well as a commercial vehicle examiner. So I've pretty much been investigating collisions for the last 30 years. And when my relationship with AMTA started and with Josh, I really realized that there's a gap between investigating collisions from a police perspective to investigating collisions from a company perspective, and the differences between the two are quite important. And we realized that there's a gap between for training. So last year, myself, Dale, and Rob Destry got together, and I've actually updated the AMTA's collision investigation course to make it more relevant to modern transportation and the way that we do things now. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I give it a bit of a push to get people to come and try the new course. But we're also going to spend probably the next 30 minutes or so just talking about the importance of correctly investigating collisions within your company and the reasons why you do that. So this presentation explores why investigating workplace collisions is critical for improving safety, ensuring accountability, and driving operational excellence within companies. We'll cover the nature of the collisions, benefits of investigations, the investigation process itself, and how to implement preventative measures. We'll begin by understanding collisions in the workplace, what a collision is, first of all, and then discuss the benefits of a thorough collision investigation. Next, we'll cover the investigation process and the best practices which you should be using before concluding with strategies for implementing preventative measures and continuous improvement. Next slide. So what is a collision? In the province of Alberta and in most other provinces, the definition of a collision is going to be the same. Down in the States, again, it's pretty much the same. But if you operate cross-border, you should probably have an understanding of the different states and how they define what is reportable and what is, a type of collision, so that you ensure that your operators know what they need to do or who to contact in the event that they are involved. So a traffic collision is defined to another motor vehicle, a bicycle, a pedestrian, or a fixed object. And those things are things like street signs, light poles, cameras, and all those good types of things, even things like benches and bus stops. And that's the definition that the Calgary Police have on their website. And then when we talk about a highway, because a highway is a fairly broad definition, the definition from the Traffic Safety Act, which is the legislation that covers the province, says that a highway means any thoroughfare, a street, road, trail, avenue, parkway, driveway, viaduct, a lane, alley, square, bridge, causeway, trestleway, or other public or other place or any part of any of them, whether publicly or privately owned, that the public is ordinarily entitled or permitted to use. So things like your yard, where the public can't generally go into, would not be considered to be a public place. But other locations, and obviously this is comes down to interpretation, but many places can be, private locations can be considered public if the public are able to wander in and out of there without being stopped or without gates and that type of thing. So sidewalks are also considered to be a highway, including the boulevards adjacent to the sidewalks, ditches which lie adjacent to and parallel with the roadway, the ditch, and if a highway right-of-way is contained between fences or between a fence on one side of the roadway, all the land between the fences or the land. So it's a very broad definition. So generally in the terms for investigation, if the place isn't somewhere where it's a fenced off part of the highway or roadway, or a yard where you have to actually go through a gate to get in, it can be considered a public roadway. And if you're involved in a collision on that public roadway, then you need to obviously report it. So having defined what a collision is, you then need to understand what a reportable collision is. So not every collision needs to be reported to your local law enforcement, but in the province of Alberta and generally across Canada, if you're involved in any collision where somebody is injured or somebody is killed, then you must report it, and you must report it to the local law enforcement. If one or more of the parties fails to remain at the scene, so the old hit and run scenario, that needs to be reported to the local law enforcement, and that is irregardless of the cost. So the third one down there is if vehicles involved have $5,000 or more combined damage, and that can include damage to roadside property. So if you drive off-road into a light pole and knock a light pole down, and the damage to your vehicle and that light pole is more than $5,000, then it needs to be reported. But just going back to number 2 there, there's nothing in the Traffic Safety Act that says anything about costs. So if a car drives past and knocks your wing mirror off, which is, let's say, I don't know, $1,000 to replace, you should still report that. That's under the legislation. In relation to collisions too, so even if none of those apply, if your driver is dealing with somebody with another driver that doesn't have documentation, such as their driver's license, registration, or proof of insurance, then you should be asking law enforcement to attend. And one of the things we'll get onto later on in the presentation is about collecting documentation at the scene, the importance of doing that, because if you're trying to follow up with somebody that doesn't have a driving license, didn't have their registration or their insurance, and then we find out they don't have insurance, then it makes life's quite difficult. So which collisions appear on your carrier profile? So many of you will know this, that for federally regulated companies, any of your vehicles with a registered weight of 4,500 kgs will appear on your carrier profile. If you are provincially regulated, then it's vehicles with a registered weight of 11,794. And then obviously, of course, if you operate buses, which have a manufacturer's seating capacity originally designed for 11 passengers or more, including the driver, that is used or intended to be used for transportation passengers on the highway, then that is another one that will appear on your carrier profile. So if you operate a light fleet, then those vehicles will not appear on your NSC carrier profile. The city has two carrier profiles, one for its NSC fleet, one for its light fleet. But the NSC one is the only one that has an R factor attached to it. So this is an important thing to consider, the distinction between preventability and fault. So when we talk about preventability, we are looking at that from the perspective of the carrier, of the company. Okay, we look at collisions to determine whether or not this collision was preventable. When we look at fault, now we're looking at insurance companies, we're looking at the courts, and it's a different thing. So when we look at what we're looking at as a carrier, we're looking at a collision to identify factors, determine root cause, and implement changes in training, behavior, policies, and procedures to prevent collisions occurring again. When your insurance company looks at your collision, or when a police officer attends the scene, they're looking at assigning fault in that collision. And as a result of that, there's the possibility of someone imposing financial penalties, normally the courts, which can carry demerits to drivers. And then obviously when we're looking at the more serious side of things, where serious collisions or impaired driving investigations and that type of stuff, then there's a possibility of prison time. So that's one of the things that Dale and I spoke a lot about when we wanted to renew this course, is that we need to differentiate between what our responsibilities are and what the responsibilities are of the people that we have no control over, the courts and your insurance companies. So very briefly, because this is covered very much in more depth during the course, but what should carriers do in the event of a collision? Having a response plan is by far the most important thing that you can have available. You need to be able to support your driver at the scene and after the scene. You need to be able to support your dispatchers, who are probably dealing with the driver who is phoning from an unknown location and is looking for information. So your dispatchers need to be aware of what's going on and how to deal with the collision too. And then, of course, potentially in serious collisions, you could potentially have the press contacting the company, and your dispatchers who are probably receiving those calls need to have a plan on how they are going to deal with questions from the press. The other thing is you've got to decide whether or not you're attending the scene or not. If you operate in the city of Calgary or the city of Edmonton, then you may, as we do, have investigators that will go out to every single collision. Now, if you operate cross-border and your operator is in Idaho and is involved in a collision, you may not be going to the scene, but you still need to be able to document it. So you need to have a procedure that the driver can follow so they can document the scene as best as they can. There are going to be situations where if it's a very expensive collision or where fatality is involved, that you may decide that you need to attend that scene. You also need to inform and stay in touch with your insurance company. Representatives from the insurance companies that are part of AMTA will all tell you that they would like to be involved as early as possible in this incident. Keeping your insurance company informed will help them to support you later on in your investigation. You should conduct a full investigation to determine if lessons can be learned and to determine the root cause of the collision. That is the carrier's responsibility. Okay, determine lessons can be learned and determine the root cause of the collision. Only by doing that can we prevent collisions happening in the future. If necessary, you should be submitting a review to the province to have collisions removed from your profile. One thing that I found out when I started doing this role is that every single collision, even those that we're not deemed to be at fault for, appear on your carrier profile. So they all carry points, and you need to be doing regular reviews of your carrier profile to ensure that any of those collisions which appear and are not your fault, you deem not to be or you deem not preventable, that you have them removed. So what should drivers do in the event of a collision? This is obviously super important, right? Because your driver's going to be there at the time, and if you're not able to attend the scene, then they're going to be the ones that are gathering the evidence from the scene for you initially. But it's also important to know what your driver should do and what they shouldn't do. They should be prepared in advance. Very few people get involved in collisions regularly, so it's not something that happens to people every day. So when it does happen, that driver has to deal with the stress of what's just happened. They may be injured, there may be people screaming and shouting. It's going to be a chaotic and hectic situation. So if you're not in any way prepared, it's even more difficult to deal with something. You prepare somebody, it helps them in stressful situations to deal with what they need to deal with. They should know what is required of them when they're involved in a collision. You would be surprised how many people don't realize that they have to be able to produce their driving license, they have to be able to show their registration, and they have to be able to prove that they have insurance coverage. How many people know exactly where your registration and insurance are on your car? Some people just can't find them, right? Especially if you're in a stressful situation. So this is where having a folder or something like that the driver knows his documents are in. So if he's asked by law enforcement, or if he's exchanging details with somebody in a minor collision, then he knows where his documents are. Contact the dispatcher and tell them what has happened. So there should be a list of information that the dispatcher will need in order to be able to initiate your response plan. Things such as where you are, what has happened, how you can be contacted. All those types of things need to be available to the driver, even if it's just a card that's in their little in the cab that says, give this information to the dispatcher. Time, date, location, vehicles involved, other injuries, and that type of stuff. Again, because situations can be quite stressful, if you have it down on a card, then it doesn't mean they have to remember those questions. They can just read them off. Importantly, is they do not admit a fault to anyone at the scene, regardless of whether the operator, the driver, feels that he was responsible. You do not admit fault to anyone at the scene. That is not helpful. And fault, as we've said, is down to the investigation. So tell your drivers, do not admit fault, leave it to the investigator. The investigator or the police officer's job is to determine fault, not yours. Drivers must provide statements to law enforcement personnel as required under local laws. Don't provide statements to the other person. You only need to provide statements to those people who are lawfully able to ask for those statements. So obviously they have to provide you with a statement too, and which will also be provided to the insurance company. And lastly, but not least, having spoken to a number of insurance providers and numerous investigators for insurance companies, they say you must provide honest information to the insurance company, because if they find out you've told lies and they've told out you've not been truthful, it has a big effect on whether or not your claim is looked upon favorably. So again, it's important that the drivers provide honest information to both your company, to yourselves, and as well to the insurance company. Do we have any questions so far? Oh, hey Ron, how you doing?
Good, Robert. I got a question. I know it has to do with being able to investigate. If you're hours away from an event, by the time you get there, there's nothing left. They get it cleaned up, and we've had the experience where, sorry, you don't get any information because everything's been seized up and you can't gain access to anything.
Yeah, is that by the local law enforcement?
Yeah, by the investigating police department.
Yeah.
So you're
at the end of the day, if they have control of the scene, that scene is theirs until they release it. And you're correct that sometimes they will clean up all the evidence prior to allowing you into the scene. That's where it's good to have a good relationship with the local law enforcement. Find out who the investigating officer is, give them your card, set up a meeting and ask them if they can meet. Because I've always found, especially in commercial vehicles, that a lot of the local law enforcement, their understanding of commercial vehicle operation is a lot less than yours. So they're more than happy to talk to you and get advice from you and get information from you in relation to what could have happened at the scene. If it's a serious collision or a fatal crash scene, then you're going to have more chance of getting information because those scenes are investigated a lot more in depth. So there'll be photos taken, there'll be a survey done of the scene, aerial drone photographs taken of the scene and that type of stuff. But for your regular collision, say someone runs into the back of one of your vehicles and it's they damage their car and there's a little bit of a mark on the back of your truck, then those will be investigated by district personnel. And then you have to rely on the information that they put into the Alberta collision report form to get some information. But there's always a way of finding out who that investigating officer is and emailing them and seeing if they've got any further information.
Yeah.
If criminal charges are laid or even traffic charges are laid, then they're not allowed under legislation to release information to until that case has been heard and has come to a final. So someone's been found guilty, not guilty, etc. So it is an unfortunate fact of how the system works. This is one of the reasons why Dale and Rob and I wanted to put this course together, because we understand that companies have vehicles that you just can't get to, right? And like you say, like if you have a vehicle that's down in Texas that's involved in a rollover, by the time you even get there, even if you leave immediately, chances are that roadway is going to have been reopened, because the local authority is not going to keep a road closed for as longer than it needs to be. So then you are pretty much relying on press photography, because those things attract a lot of press photography, right? So generally you can get press photos, and then the police report, which again you have to apply for, and you get when you get it. Is that a good one? I mean, no, it's not the perfect answer, but
no, that's it deals with is and like you said, one of the worst things that happens is because we don't have accidents every day, is getting the right information at the time, and getting everybody there, because they're all under stress. There's a shock value and whatever, and even with dispatch, it's a working team thing, is trying to get, did you take a picture of the license? Did you, you got all this information before you let somebody go, rather than getting in a panic and everybody runs in circles.
That's why it's good to have a checklist for the driver, right? So this response plan and checklist for the driver, which we go into in the course, just gives you that the driver the option to go, right, I need to check the list. Have I done this? Have I done this? Have I done this? Have I done this? And if he can't do something, if something is not possible, then at least he can tell you that, right? Like the other vehicle left the scene, I couldn't get a license plate. So, okay, I'll carry on then. Why do we bother? Why do we bother to do investigations? Isn't it just the cost of doing business? Well, when you're a driver, you're 1 million kilometers a year, it's bound to happen. You can't account for all the people doing the roadway, or get rid of them. They're clearly a liability. These are some things which obviously in the past have been said, but these comments are not helpful. They don't fix the problem, right? Is it just the cost of doing business? Like, it could cost you your business, let's be honest. Especially down in the US, like, you're involved in a fatal collision, they start out at what, $10 million, I think. So you have to think about this. It's not just the cost of doing business. Is it a fact of life? Yes. Can we do something about it? Yeah, we can. So this is why we do investigate. Car accident rates are at a significant public health concern in Canada. They not only impact thousands of lives each year, but also contribute to increasing insurance premiums. In 2023, there were just short of 2,000 motor vehicle fatalities across Canada, which is the highest in 10 years, and 9,261 serious injuries, so just under 10,000. This is the highest in 5 years, as reported by Transport Canada. Thanks to our friends at BrokerLink. This is on their website. So when we're looking at the reasons behind collisions, these are some of the things that have come out as being the top 5 causations. So distracted driving is currently the number one reason for collisions. Texting and being on a phone call or other activity that take your attention away from the road. Legislation across Canada is slightly different in relation to distracted driving, and as it is down in the States. So there's no sort of uniform distracted driving legislation, but generally you shouldn't be holding your cell phone while you're driving. And it has been proven and shown that even if you're holding a conversation on a hands-free system, you lose some of the concentration on the skills that you should be using to operate your vehicle. So in the city of Calgary, our distracted driving policy is that you do not operate your vehicle while you are talking on the phone, even if it's on a Bluetooth or wireless free. So we're trying to do what we can to reduce that, right? And then secondly, we have driving over the posted speed limit. Again, exceeding speed limits, especially in the larger the vehicle, the more energy is involved in collisions, which causes higher injuries and more damage. Inclement weather conditions, we get a lot of those in this province. So obviously this is something that we try to plan around. And if you know that road conditions are going to deteriorate, then maybe we change routes or we postpone. Impaired driving used to be the number one back in the 90s and has been overtaken by both all those three above. Driving under the influence of drugs and alcohol clearly limits your ability to operate, reduces response times and that type of stuff. So we have legislation in the province now, especially for operators of 11.794 and over, that say absolutely zero alcohol or you lose your license. That's under the provincial scheme. And then the last one down there is failure to obey traffic signs, stop signs, yield signs, and that type of stuff. So what we're ultimately trying to do is we're trying to protect our driver, our vehicle, and other road users. And what we don't want, and the last thing we want, is for injuries to be involved, right? So this is why we do the investigations that we do. So some of the potential consequences for staff and your assets, right? Your vehicles and your loads and that. Loss of employee time. So not only do you lose the time for your operator at the collision scene, but if they're injured, then they're going to be off. Okay, they're going to be off sick for a bit. You have to replace that driver. You have to replace that driver's route. So even minor collisions cause serious and sometimes long-term injuries, and sadly even loss of life amongst employees. Can you replace that employee while they're off? Collisions where injuries occur are part of their work or to report it to WCB. So WCB, now if you have somebody that's off on long-term sick, how does that going to affect your premiums? Does that affect your risk factor when it comes to your WCB premiums? These are some of the other things you have to think about. Your vehicles and equipment damage. So collisions result in significant damage to machinery and equipment. So your vehicle's now in the shop. You're waiting for spare parts from somewhere in China or somewhere in Europe. So that vehicle's off the road for longer than just sitting there waiting to be repaired. So you've got the replacement cost of parts as well as the lost time that vehicle's off the road. Operational downtime, again, that's you get increased expenses if you've got to replace that vehicle, you've got to replace that route. Higher insurance premiums. Clearly, if they start to see a pattern, your insurance company is going to start wondering what's going on and may increase your insurance premiums, which is one of the reasons why we said, like, you have to work with your insurance company to try and minimize those rates. And then carrier profile points. So again, this is something that not many people think about, but each time your vehicle is involved in a collision or receives a summons, it attracts points to your carrier profile. And regardless, as I said before, regardless of whether you were at fault or not, how do you monitor those collisions? Are you reviewing and are you appealing those collisions for the ones that you know you're non-preventable? Okay, do you even know how to do that? And in the course, we talk a bit about how to manage your carrier profile from that perspective. So the benefits of the investigations. So we're ensuring workplace safety and employee well-being first of all, okay? Number one asset in any company is our people, and we need to make sure that we're looking after them. So we identify hazards. Investigations reveal workplace hazards and unsafe behaviours that could risk employee health and safety. Are all drivers wearing their seatbelts? Was the driver that was involved in the collision not wearing his seatbelt. Why was he not wearing his seatbelt? Is there a culture within the company of drivers that don't wear their seatbelts? Okay, things like that. Once we identify that, we need to tackle it. Corrective actions. Implement corrective measures, reduces risk, and prevents future workplace incidents. So if we find out that the driver wasn't wearing his seatbelt, our investigation reveals that drivers just generally don't wear their seatbelts, then we need to do something about that. Let's do an education campaign. Let's do something that's going to make them understand that the importance of wearing seatbelts. And then, of course, employee well-being. Looking after our employees, showing that we're looking after our employees means that we promote a safe and we have a safe work environment, means people are going to want to work for us. They want to keep working for us. And they know that we're going to look after them and we look after their well-being. So that's talking about our people. What about assets and our reputation of the company, right? So our commitment to safety. Investigations show that our company's dedication to maintaining safety standards and responsibility. We all have a responsibility under occupational health and safety to make sure that our workplace is safe and that our workers are safe. So by doing a proper and full investigation, we are showing to our employees as well as the management of that company that we have a commitment to safety. Minimizing asset damage. Obviously, if we do a good investigation and we have a good root cause analysis and we figure out, okay, this is the reason why this happened, maybe now we can actually prevent further damage or further incidents occurring, which are going to affect our assets, our fleet, our vehicles, our staff. And then obviously preserving our reputation. Maintaining safety and asset protection strengthens trust with clients and our stakeholders. And we all know that keeping stakeholders and keeping clients is an important part of the things that we do. Mitigating legal and financial risks. So the importance of doing a good investigation, we ensure regulatory compliance. Do a good investigation that helps the company comply with legal regulations and industry standards effectively. So we know that if there was an issue, we know we can fix that issue and we can close that loophole. Reducing liability exposure. Risks, identifying risks early, minimizes potential legal liabilities and protects the organization's interests. Avoiding financial penalties. Again, proper risk management prevents costly fines, litigation, expenses, and insurance claims from rising. And then protecting your carrier profile, okay? Because so much is linked to your carrier profile. Are you checking your carrier profile for those convictions and collisions and CVSA inspections? What does your profile tell you about your risk? Are you checking it and are you sending in collisions for review? Recently, the city had a bus that was stolen by a member of the public, and they were subsequently arrested by Calgary Police Service, and that person was charged with no license, dangerous driving, and a bunch of other offences, which appeared on our carrier profile. And I had to contact CPS and the province and say, well, this wasn't our driver, like this vehicle was stolen. And they're like, well, it was your vehicle, so we need the police report. So it was lucky that I noticed that because this person's name appeared, and I'm like, this person's not a member of one of our staff. So it's important that you go through your carrier profile so that you understand if things come up that shouldn't be on there, so you can actually get those points taken off. Because I think we ended up with like 12 points as a result of that incident. Okay, so when you're doing your investigation, you come up with what happened. What was the reason that this collision happened? So these next few slides are just from the city's dashboard. We have a dashboard which is available to all city employees, so they can see the number of collisions we've had, the type of collision, and all that type of stuff, because we want to be open and honest with everybody, right? So for the city, between 22 and 2025, these are the most common incidents for our fleet. And if you have to bear in mind that this includes our NSC fleet, our bus fleet, light fleet, and also includes equipment, so graders and plows and that type of stuff. So we can see from historically that our number one issue is failing to ensure clearance. So recently we had a number of every week we get bus strikes. Bus mirrors get broken off and get strike objects. So one of the things that has been implemented in transit now is that they're looking at the getting rid of the external mirrors and actually having the displays on the inside of the bus. So it reduces the width of the bus considerably, and it should help us to reduce the number of mirror strikes that we have. So just going down the list, obviously backing is obviously a concern. Even with the advent of rear view cameras on many of our vehicles, we still get people backing into poles and posts and that type of stuff. Equipment misuse and neglect, that's generally for equipment, so graders and loaders and that type of stuff. So equipment not being used as it should be. Failed to stop, failed to yield, and follow too close. They come quite close together. Minor damage is just minor scrapes and scratches that can generally be identified from what we would call unknown damage. So if somebody reports on a pre-trip inspection that there's some minor damage. So we were able to catalog all our incidents and then identify what our training needs are. So what do we investigate? So when we conduct an investigation, there has to be an outcome to that investigation. And then we've already mentioned preventable collisions and non-preventable collisions. And the province looks at preventable and non-preventable. Within the city, we have three other options. So we have incidents. So we have acts of God, damage to company vehicles. So for instance, during a snow event, we had a large bough of a tree fall on top of a city vehicle. So it caused damage to the roof panels. So that was considered as an incident. Obviously, the driver wasn't present with the vehicle, but it's recorded as incident. Unknown damage, damage to company vehicles by the investigator is unable to ascertain a clear explanation of the events which led to the damage. And a lot of this, again, is we get pre-trip and post-trip inspection reports where operators find damage and they're unsure of how the damage happened. We do an investigation and we still can't figure out when or where this damage happened. So that gets recorded as unknown. Non-preventable, this is obviously where the company vehicle is being used for its primary purpose and the operator did everything reasonable to prevent it. So if an operator is involved in a collision, but a vehicle pulls out in front of them, they don't have time to be able to brake to a stop. They're braking. They have no option to steer because there's a vehicle in the other lane. That would be considered non-preventable. Preventable is defined by ourselves as where the company vehicle is being used for its primary purpose at the time of the collision and the operator failed to do everything reasonable to prevent it. We also have another one called minor damage, which is a subcategory of preventable, and it's basically where it's a preventable collision, but the damage is minor in nature. So there might just be like a small scrape or a scuff on a bumper or something like that. So determining preventability. So this is what we use to determine whether something is preventable or non-preventable. So we use the RUA. So R, did the operator recognize the threat? Were they driving defensively, anticipating hazards and planning their defense? U is did the operator understand the correct defensive tactic to avoid the hazard? And A is, did the operator act appropriately and in time to the hazard? Was the action appropriate in the circumstances? So this is just an example. So we have an operator that's planning to merge onto Deerfoot Trail from McKnight Boulevard, but they end up running into the back of a vehicle at the yield sign. So an investigator attends the scene, and we determined that there was no braking pre-impact. The weather conditions were clear and dry. The road surface is dry, and the driver's speed at impact is roughly 20 to 30 kilometers an hour based on the scene evidence, and we also have our geotab data. And then the driver states in his statement that the vehicle ahead suddenly stopped and they didn't have time to brake. So in order to determine whether this is preventable, we use that RUA. So R, did the operator recognize the threat? Were they driving defensively? Did they anticipate any hazards? Did they plan a defense? Did the operator understand the correct defense to avoid the hazard? Did the operator act appropriately and in time to the hazard? Was the action appropriate in the circumstances? So in this circumstances, we've got the operator that there's no pre-impact braking, which suggests that he wasn't planning. He knows that there was a vehicle ahead of him. Was he anticipating that vehicle was going to go? Maybe. Should he have anticipated that vehicle was going to stop? Probably. Therefore, did the driver understand the correct defensive tactic? Should he have slowed down? Should he have covered the brake? Should he have given himself more distance between himself and the vehicle in front in case that vehicle did brake? And did the operator act appropriately in the time of the hazard? No, because he ran into the back of the vehicle in front of him because he didn't give himself enough time. So in this circumstances, we would classify this as preventable collision. So this is something we go into way more depth in the course, but these are the steps to conducting a good collision investigation. So first of all, and of course this is all depending on whether or not you attend the scene or whether you have access to the scene, where the scene is and that type of stuff. But in general, when conducting any investigation, you should try and secure the scene. Okay, that's obviously to protect yourself and protect anybody else that's in that scene. It also prevents scene evidence being lost or being added, which is the other issue, right? Once you've done that, gather your evidence within the scene. That's going to include photographs, sketches. It could include objects within that scene, statements from anybody that was present, interviewing of witnesses, so obtaining witness interviews, speaking to your driver, speaking to any passengers, and documenting them properly. Securing data and video from different sources. Securing data is something which is generally becoming more and more available. Things such as dashcam video. If you can get dashcam video, picture paints 1,000 words, videos paints 1,000,000, right? But there are also a huge number of ways to access data from vehicles these days that many people don't know about, but which can be used to help you understand what happened during the collision, and as a collision reconstructionist, helps to reconstruct the collision. Things like airbag control modules, and that type of stuff. So local businesses may be able to give you video footage if you can see video footage video cameras on the outsides of buildings and that sort of stuff. So it's all part of your investigation, right? Analyzing the gathered data. So once you've gathered all of this information, you then need to analyze it and figure out what that information tells you. Okay, then you go through your process of your RUA. Okay, is this collision preventable? Is it non-preventable? If it's non-preventable, then that may just be where your investigation concludes, right? But if it's preventable, we need to go that step further. So then we need to conduct a root cause analysis. Okay, why did this person not notice the vehicle in front was stopping? Okay, is it just they were inattentive? Was it they were in a phone conversation? Was it that they hadn't slept the night before and they were on early shift? They came in at 6 o'clock. They hadn't slept the night before, so they're tired. There's going to be some sort of reason why that person didn't notice the car in front of them had stopped, and that's what we're looking to do. That's where our job now begins, to try and prevent future collisions happening. Once we've conducted our root cause analysis, then we submit our recommendations. So we submit recommendations to our health and safety committee or to management team to say, look, this is what we did, this is what we found, this is what we think we should do. And you submit those recommendations and with timelines and all that good sort of stuff. And then once we've done that, we review those results. We review them to make sure that things are still relevant, things haven't changed. Maybe we move away from a particular vehicle which had a particular issue. Now we've resolved that and we've reviewed that result, and now we now have a different vehicle, so now we don't have to worry about that particular thing. But it should always be something that can be looked back on, reviewed, and things that can be learned from. When you're conducting your investigation, these are the three things which you need to investigate. Your driver, so your driver's inputs or no inputs or what they were doing, that type of thing. The machine, so you should always consider your vehicle when you're looking at mechanical defects, or was the tire underinflated. Every investigation should include the vehicle. Was the pre-trip inspection done? When was the vehicle last in the mechanics bay? What was it in there for? Was it just a major service? Something like that, so you can rule out the fact that there was an issue with the vehicle. You often hear drivers say, well, the brakes didn't work, or the wipers weren't working properly, so I couldn't see, that type of stuff. So those things need to be looked at, those things need to be investigated, and those things need to be fixed if necessary. And then the last one is the environment. So is there something that in the environment that contributed to the collision? Was it a heavy snow day? Was there snow falling? Did the snow fall after the road had frozen? Like back in November when we had that horrendous day in Calgary. What is the road layout? All those things need to be included in your report. Light timing, were the lights working properly? All those sorts of things. So again, we'll go into these a lot more. We go into these a lot more in the course and discuss them so that you understand the types of things that you need to be looking at. Effective data collection documentation. The day one when I became a police officer, they said notes. If you don't put it down, it didn't happen. And I know that's true in almost every other place I've worked. If you don't document it, people don't believe it ever happened, right? So super important that you gather that information and you collect it and you record it properly. Everything from photos and videos, all the way down to capturing the driver's logbook details. All those types of things need to be captured, need to be available, and you need to know when and where those things were found, located, identified, and that type of stuff. Having an understanding of science when you're an investigator for collisions is crazily important. We go through on the course, we give you a basic understanding of physics and math. That gentleman with the long hair in the bottom right corner there, Sir Isaac Newton, the father of physics, modern physics, and he came up with the laws of motion, and just about everything that happens between vehicles and pedestrians, vehicles and cyclists, is because of physics, right? So having an understanding of pitch, roll, yaw, how vehicles react when they're struck through a center of mass and that type of stuff, all those things help you to put together what happened at a scene and make sense of why vehicles ended up where they did. So again, on the course, we talk about different types of tire marks, what those tell you, how to identify tire marks, how to identify damage, and those types of things. So we'll go into that a little bit. We don't go crazy. We don't do the old police level 2 course now with days and days of math, just because we don't think you need to know that. If you have a collision which is complex and complicated, then our suggestion is then you contact an engineering company or a company such as mine, Big Rock Forensics, and we can do a more in-depth report for you on what the road evidence tells you. So you get the basics to know, that looks strange, or that doesn't match, that doesn't look right. And then if you need more, then you can obviously contact experts like myself and other companies that do these types of things to give you figures and speeds and that type of stuff. So all your investigation leads to this, the root cause analysis and the reporting. So you should be able to identify a root cause. Sometimes you can, but we should at least try to find a root cause of what happened. And then we can analyze that to uncover underlying causes, which enable us to develop effective targeted solutions. So if we can find out why the collision happened, we can do something to try and stop it happening again. And then obviously for clear reporting, communicating those findings helps both our employees, our drivers, and our management teams to be able to understand and implement things which need to be done to prevent these types of collisions happening again. So just to finish off with, if you develop these skills and these abilities, you can identify the risks, which will help tailor safety protocols, standardize best practices, and then obviously at the end of the day, we're there to try and reduce collisions, right? We're there to reduce injuries to our operators, reduce collisions, reduce downtime, reduce asset issues and concerns, and make everyone go home at the end of the day happy. Training and awareness initiatives. So as a result of these investigations, we may be able to identify training issues, training concerns, and identify initiatives. So for instance, there's we've got this sign here which goes up on people's gates as they're exiting the yard, just as a reminder, right? So be pedestrian aware, don't use your cell phone, make sure you buckle up and just keep to the speed limit. You can tailor your training needs to to the outcomes if it becomes a regular thing. So it just allows us to move on to this part of the investigation by making changes. So yeah, like I said, check out the AMTA courses. The new course is coming in 2026, and we feel it will help you prepare you for success when dealing with incidents involving your vehicles for collisions. And then I've put the link button down there, the link for AMTA training courses. And that's it. That's all I've got.
Big thank you to Bob for joining us and shedding light on collision investigation today. And happy 2026 to everyone listening. We wish you a very safe year ahead. We are going to close with some AMTA news. AMTA's 88th annual conference takes place April 22nd to 23rd at the Grey Eagle Event Center in Calgary. Registration and sponsorship is open. And save the date alert! AMTA's 2026 Professional Truck Driving Championship will take place Saturday, May 30th, 2026. Stay tuned for upcoming details on driver and volunteer registration, sponsorship opportunities, and more. Do you have any questions or comments about the Steering Change episodes? Maybe an idea for an episode you'd like to listen to? Reach out on our Instagram at AMTA_CA or LinkedIn and Facebook at Alberta Motor Transport Association. Stay safe and see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of AMTA's Steering Change podcast. The views expressed by guests of the Steering Change podcast are their own and may not reflect the views of AMTA, its hosts, or sponsors. Did you have a question that you would like answered on an upcoming episode of the Steering Change podcast? We want to hear from you. To submit a question to the Steering Change mailbag, hit up our DMs on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram with the hashtag Steering Change, and your question will be answered either live on the podcast or by one of our SMEs here at AMTA. We ask that you share this episode with those in your network that could benefit from what we discussed today, and make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform so you can be notified when future episodes are released. You can learn more about us and our mission by visiting www.amta.ca. Now get out there and have a safe day.